I was sitting in that gray mediation room in downtown Phoenix, staring at the conference table I'd refinished myself back in 1995. 35 years, $7 million, 5 auto repair shops. And my stepson thought he deserved 40% of it because his dying mother said a few words. Jake sat across from me with his lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman from Scottsdale, who clearly charged more per hour than most of my mechanics made in a week. He wouldn't look at me, just kept his eyes on his phone, scrolling like this was some minor inconvenience in his day, like we weren't about to tear apart what was left of our family. The mediator, a woman named Patricia Chen, was shuffling through papers. She had that look I recognized from years of dealing with customers who thought they knew more about cars than I did. Confident, already made up her mind. I had one folder in front of me, medical records. Jake had no idea what was inside. Neither did his lawyer. But I knew that once I opened it, there was no going back. Our relationship, whatever was left of it, would be done. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. Let me tell you how I got here. It started in 1988. I was 29 years old working as a mechanic at a Chevrolet dealership in Tempe. I'd been turning wrenches since I was 16. Learned everything from my old man who ran a small garage in Tucson. Never went to college. Didn't see the point when I could strip an engine and rebuild it faster than most ASSE-certified techs. I met Linda at a customer appreciation barbecue the dealership threw. She was there with her son Jake. He was 3 years old, running around in a little Cardinals jersey, getting dirt all over everything. Her husband had left 2 years before, just vanished one day, and she was raising Jake alone while working 2 jobs. We started dating. I fell in love with her laugh. The way she never complained, even when things were hard. Jake called me Robert for the first 2 years. Never Dad. And I never pushed it. I figured he'd come around when he was ready. In December of 1988, Linda's father, Walter, called me into his study. He was a retired accountant, had saved carefully his whole life. He looked at me over his reading glasses and said, "Robert, I see how you work. I see how you treat my daughter and my grandson. I want to help you start something." He wrote me a check for $12,000. "This isn't a loan," he said. "This is an investment in family. Build something good. Build something that'll last. Build something that exists after you're gone." I used every penny to open my first shop, Bob's Auto Repair, on Van Buren Street. 1 bay, 1 lift. Me and one other mechanic I'd worked with at the dealership. We did oil changes, brake jobs, basic repairs. I worked 70-hour weeks. Linda would bring Jake by after school, and he'd sit in the waiting room doing homework while I finished up the day's work. I married Linda in 1990. Jake was 5. At the wedding, Walter pulled me aside again. "You're family now," he said. "What's mine will be yours someday. Take care of my girls." I promised him I would. The business grew. By 1995, I opened a second location in Scottsdale. By 2000, a third in Mesa. I reinvested every profit, bought better equipment, hired good people, built a reputation for honest work at fair prices. Jake grew up around the shops, but he never showed interest in cars. He was smart, really smart, got straight A's, went to Arizona State on a partial academic scholarship, studied finance. After college, he got a job at a wealth management firm in Scottsdale, worked his way up. By his 30s, he was making good money, drove a BMW, lived in a nice condo. We weren't close, Jake and me. I tried over the years. Took him to Diamondbacks games, taught him to change oil, invited him to company barbecues. He always seemed distant. Polite but distant, like I was his mother's husband, not his father. Linda noticed it too. "He's just focused on his career," she'd say. "He'll come around." By 2018, I had 5 locations and 42 employees. The business was worth over $6 million according to the valuation my accountant did that year. I was 61 years old and starting to think about succession planning. That's when things started to change. Thanksgiving 2019, we were at our house in Chandler, the whole family, Jake, his girlfriend Amanda, Linda's sister, and her family. After dinner, Linda pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Robert," she said, "I've been thinking. This business, everything you built, it's a family business. I looked at her confused. What do you mean? My father started you off. This has always been family money, family effort. When we're gone, Jake should have a part of it. I remember feeling uncomfortable. Honey, your father gave me that money 31 years ago. Paid him back. Remember that $10,000 I gave him in 1995 for his retirement RV? She frowned like she was trying to remember. Did you? I don't recall that. We drove to the bank together, I said gently. You were there. She looked at me for a long moment, then smiled. Oh well, regardless, Jake is family. He should benefit from the family business. I didn't think much of it at the time. Linda was 58, healthy as far as I knew. I figured we had years to sort out estate planning, wills, all that. But then she started forgetting other things. Small things at first, where she put her keys, appointments she'd made, names of people she'd known for years. By early 2020 I was worried. I made her see a doctor, then a specialist, then a neurologist. In March of 2020 they found it. A tumor, glioblastoma, growing in her frontal lobe. The doctor explained that it had probably been growing for years slowly, that it could affect memory, judgment, decision-making. We tried everything, surgery, radiation, chemo. Nothing worked. The tumor kept growing. During her treatment, Jake visited more often. I was grateful for that at least. But I noticed he always steered conversations toward the business. How's the company doing, Bob? He'd ask. What's it worth now? Have you thought about selling? And Linda, in her deteriorating state, kept saying it. Jake should have part of the business. It's a family business. My father started it. Every time I gently correct her. Your father gave me a loan, honey. Paid it back. I built this. But she'd just look at me confused like she was hearing it for the first time. Jake was always there for those conversations, always listening. Linda passed away in September of 2023. The funeral was beautiful. Jake gave a eulogy about his mother, how strong she was, how she never gave up. He didn't mention me once. After the service at the reception, he pulled me aside. We need to talk about the business. He said, not today, Jake. Let's just grieve your mother. She told me I was supposed to have a part of it. You heard her multiple times. I felt my chest tighten. Jake, your mother was sick. The tumor affected her thinking. We can talk about this later, but not today. He stared at me for a long moment. We'll be talking about it soon, he said. 3 months later, I got a letter from his lawyer. Jake was claiming 40% ownership of Bob's auto repair, all 5 locations, based on verbal promises made by his mother that it was a family business and he was entitled to a share as family. I couldn't believe it. Called him. He didn't answer. Texted nothing. Finally, I drove to his condo. He answered the door in gym clothes, looking annoyed. Jake, what is this? I held up the letter. It's what it says. Mom promised me part of the business. Multiple witnesses heard her. You heard her. Your mother was dying of a brain tumor. She wasn't thinking clearly. That's a disgusting thing to say about her. His voice was cold. She knew exactly what she was saying. Dad's money started that business. It's family money. I deserve my share. Walter gave me $12,000 in 1988. I paid him back in 1995 with interest. He signed a receipt. Have it. Your mother was there. I never saw any receipt. Mom never mentioned any payback. All I know is that my grandfather funded your business and now you're trying to cut his family out of it. You're his family. I left you and your mother as primary beneficiaries on my life insurance. You'll inherit the house, the retirement accounts, but the business is mine, Jake. Built it. See you in mediation, he said and closed the door. My lawyer, Tom Rodriguez, told me we had a strong case. He has no documentation, no written agreement, no ownership papers. Your business license lists you as sole proprietor. You have financial records showing you paid back the loan. This is frivolous. Then why go to mediation? Because if we refuse, it looks bad, like we have something to hide. We show our evidence, we shut this down before it becomes a lawsuit. It's the smart play. So, there I was, the 14th of February 2024, Valentine's Day, sitting in a mediation room across from my stepson, who wanted to take 40% of everything I'd built. Patricia Chen, the mediator, started the session. Let's begin with each party stating their position. Mr. Lawson, she looked at Jake. His lawyer, Amanda Patel, spoke first. My client, Jake Lawson, is the biological son of Linda Lawson, who passed away in September 2023. Linda's father, Walter Morrison, provided the initial capital for Bob's auto repair in 1988. Throughout the years, Linda repeatedly stated that the business was a family business and that Jake, as her son and Walter's grandson, was entitled to a share. We have sworn statements from 3 witnesses who heard Linda make these statements. We're seeking 40% ownership as a fair division. Patricia made notes. She turned to me. Mr. Patterson, my lawyer Tom laid out our case. Mr. Patterson is the sole proprietor and has been since 1988. The initial $12,000 from Walter Morrison was repaid in full in 1995 with interest with a signed receipt. We have financial records, tax returns, business licenses, all showing sole ownership. The statements allegedly made by Linda Lawson occurred while she was suffering from a brain tumor that her doctors confirmed affected her cognitive function and judgment. These statements have no legal bearing on business ownership. Patricia nodded slowly. Mr. Lawson, I'd like to hear directly from you. Tell me about your relationship with your stepfather and the business. Jake leaned forward. He'd prepared for this. Could tell. I grew up in those auto shops, he said. From the time I was 5 years old, I watched my family build that business. My grandfather provided the seed money. My mother provided emotional support, managed the books in the early years, helped with customer service. I did my homework in those waiting rooms. That business is as much a part of my family history as it is Robert's. It was a good speech, except most of it was lies. Your mother never managed the books, I said. She had her own job. She worked at the school district for 20 years. Jake didn't miss a beat. She helped in the beginning, and regardless of official duties, she was there. She was part of it. And she told me repeatedly, especially in her last years, that I was supposed to have a share. Patricia looked at me. Mr. Patterson, what do you say to that? His mother was dying of a brain tumor that affected her judgment. She'd forgotten that her father's loan was repaid. She'd forgotten a lot of things. She once forgot my name, called me Walter. The tumor destroyed her memory and reasoning. That's a horrible thing to say. Jake's voice cracked. You're using her illness to cheat me out of what she wanted me to have. Jake, I said quietly. You know this isn't what she really wanted. You know she was sick. I know she was my mother, and she told me over and over that this was a family business. You heard her. Thanksgiving 2019, Christmas 2020, her birthday in 2021, Easter 2022. Every time I visited, she said it. Jake should have part of the business. Patricia was writing everything down. She looked at me. Did you hear Mrs. Lawson say these things? Took a breath. Yes, I heard her say words to that effect, but she was already sick by then. The tumor was diagnosed in March 2020, but the doctors said it had been growing for years. Her judgment was compromised. Convenient, Jake said. Blame everything on her illness. The truth is, Mom saw through you. She realized you'd used her father's money to build an empire and cut her family out. She was trying to fix it before she died. I felt my face get hot. I didn't use anyone. I worked 70-hour weeks. I bled into that business. I paid your college apartment deposit when your scholarship didn't cover it. I paid for your mother's funeral. I've been family to you for 35 years. You've been my mother's husband, Jake said coldly. Not my family. Patricia held up a hand. Let's take a breath. Mr. Lawson, you mentioned witnesses. Who are these people? Amanda Patel produced 3 sworn statements. Linda's sister Margaret Morrison, Linda's best friend, Carol Hendress, and Jake's girlfriend Amanda Garrett. All 3 have provided sworn testimony that they heard Linda Lawson state that the business was family property and Jake should have a share. Tom took the statements, read them. He looked at me concerned. Patricia read them too. These seem credible. All three witnesses heard similar statements over multiple years. Mr. Patterson, do you dispute that these conversations occurred? I don't dispute that Linda said those words. I dispute that they have any legal meaning. She was sick. She couldn't make those decisions. She was sick at the end, Jake said. But she was talking about this for years, since 2019, before we even knew about the tumor. She knew what she wanted. I could see Patricia's expression changing. She was starting to believe him. Mr. Patterson, she said, I understand your position, but we have multiple witnesses over multiple years. Even if Mrs. Lawson was ill toward the end, the pattern of statements suggests this was her long-held belief that the business had family origins and should have family ownership. It doesn't have family origins, I said, my voice rising. Walter gave me a loan. Paid it back. Have the receipt. I have his signature. Tom pulled out the receipt. Dated the 15th of October 1995. Walter Morrison's signature. Loan repaid in full. $10,000 principal plus $2,000 interest. No further obligations. Patricia examined it. This says $10,000. The initial loan was $12,000. Correct. He nodded. He forgave $2,000 as a wedding gift. He wrote that in a separate letter. Do you have that letter? My stomach dropped. It was in a box of old papers. I think it got lost in our move in 2003. Jake's lawyer pounced. So, you have a receipt for partial repayment 7 years after the loan with no documentation of the terms of the original loan. For all we know, there was an understanding that the business would be shared. There was no such understanding, I said. Patricia looked at me with something close to pity. Mr. Patterson, I'm starting to see a pattern here. A father-in-law helps his daughter's new husband. The family watches the business grow. The wife, before she dies, repeatedly says her son should have a share. Multiple witnesses confirm this. And you're claiming it's all invalid because she was sick. 'Cause she felt desperate. Patricia, listened to me. I worked every day for 35 years. Jake never worked a single hour in those shops. He went to college. He became a financial advisor. He makes good money. He doesn't need this. It's not about need, Jake said quietly. It's about what's right, what my mother wanted, what my grandfather intended. Patricia closed her notebook. Mr. Patterson, I have to be honest. Based on what I'm hearing, I think your stepson has a legitimate claim. The initial capital came from family. Your wife repeatedly expressed that family should benefit. I understand you worked hard, but that doesn't erase the family foundation of this business. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You think he deserves 40% of a business he never touched? I think there's merit to his claim. Yes, you benefited from family support. Your stepson is family. Your deceased wife wanted him to benefit. I think you're being, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Selfish. I've been called a lot of things in 64 years, but never that. Not about this. Jake looked satisfied. His lawyer looked triumphant. Tom looked worried. I reached for my folder. Before we go any further, I said, there's something you need to see. I pulled out the medical records, Linda's neurological evaluations, 3 years of doctor's notes, MRI reports, cognitive assessments. What is this? Patricia asked. These are my wife's complete medical records from her tumor diagnosis. I want everyone in this room to understand exactly what we're talking about when we discuss her state of mind. I slid the first document across the table. Dr. Sarah Weinstein's evaluation from April 2020. Read the highlighted section. I said, Patricia, read aloud. Patient shows signs of impaired executive function, memory loss, and compromised decision-making capacity. The tumor's location in the frontal lobe suggests these symptoms may have been present for 2 to 4 years prior to diagnosis. Patient should not make significant financial or legal decisions without medical clearance. The room went quiet. I pushed across another document. Dr. James Park's neuropsychological evaluation from September 2020. Page 3. I said, Patricia read patient scored in the 5th percentile for cognitive reasoning. Shows significant impairment in judgment, planning, and understanding consequences of decisions. Family members should be advised that patient cannot reliably manage financial matters or make binding agreements. Jake's face had gone pale. This doesn't prove anything. Mom was still herself. She knew what she wanted. I laid out the third document. Dr. Weinstein's note from November 2019. Before the diagnosis but after the symptoms started. Read it, I said. Patricia's voice was quieter now. Patient's husband reports increasing confusion and memory lapses over past 18 months. Patient insists certain events occurred. That husband says did not happen. Patient claims to remember conversations differently than others present. Recommend cognitive screening. All three witnesses, I said, looking at Jake. Heard your mother say I should share the business with you between 2019 and 2023. Every single statement was made after the tumor had already begun affecting her judgment. Every single one. I pulled out another document. This is Dr. Weinstein's letter from December 2020. She wrote it for our estate lawyer. It states clearly that Linda was not competent to make decisions about property, finances, or legal matters. It's signed and notarized. Jake's lawyer, Amanda Patel, took the documents. She read them carefully. Her expression changed. There's more, I said. I pulled out a timeline I'd prepared. Here are the dates. Linda made statements about the business being family property according to your sworn witnesses. November 2019, December 2020, March 2021, September 2022. Every single date is after her cognitive decline began. I looked at Patricia. You asked if I disputed that these conversations occurred. You don't. I was there for most of them, but they weren't conversations with a woman in her right mind. They were conversations with a woman dying of a tumor that was eating away at her ability to reason, to remember, to make decisions. I pulled out one more document. My hand was shaking. Now, this is from Linda's oncologist, Dr. Robert Chen, written 2 months before she died. It's a capacity assessment. He states clearly that Linda Lawson did not have the mental capacity to make decisions about property or finances, that any statement she made about such matters should not be considered valid expressions of intent. The room was silent. Patricia Chen's expression had completely changed. She wasn't looking at me with pity anymore. Jake was staring at the table. His lawyer was reading through the medical documents, her lips pressed tight. These should have been disclosed earlier. Amanda Patel said quietly. We're disclosing them now, Tom said. The medical facts are clear. Mrs. Lawson's statements about the business cannot be considered valid. She lacked capacity. Patricia looked at Jake. Mr. Lawson, did you know the extent of your mother's cognitive impairment? She was sick, Jake said. His voice was different now, smaller. I knew she was sick. Did you know she'd been declared legally incompetent to make financial decisions? He didn't answer. Did you know your mother had Alzheimer's-like symptoms from the tumor? That she couldn't remember events correctly? That she would insist things happened that didn't happen? She remembered me. Jake said she knew who I was. That's not the same as having the capacity to understand business ownership. Patricia said her tone had shifted completely. Mr. Patterson, I need to ask you something directly. Did you ever try to get your wife to sign over part of the business to Jake? Never, I said. I knew she wasn't capable of making that decision. I would never have taken advantage of her condition. Patricia looked at Jake. But you're asking us to honor statements she made while in exactly that condition. Statements that directly benefit you financially. Jake's lawyer put a hand on his arm. We should take a break. I don't think we need a break, Patricia said. I think this mediation is over. Mr. Lawson, based on these medical records, your mother's statements carry no legal weight. She was not competent to promise away someone else's property. Your claim has no merit. She wanted me to have it, Jake said, his voice cracked. She told me over and over. She was dying. I said the tumor made her say things. Made her believe things that weren't true. Sorry, Jake. I know you want to believe she meant it. But she wasn't herself. Amanda Patel was gathering her papers. We'll need to review these medical records with our own experts. By all means, Tom said. But you'll find they're comprehensive and conclusive. Mrs. Lawson lacked capacity. Any court will see that. Patricia stood up. Gentlemen, I'm going to recommend that you, Mr. Lawson, withdraw your claim. If you proceed to litigation, these medical records will be entered into evidence. A judge will rule against you, and you'll have spent money on legal fees for nothing. Jake stood up abruptly. This is insane. She was my mother. She wanted me taken care of. Then she should have made a will, I said quietly. She should have had her lawyer draw up papers while she was still competent. But she didn't, Jake. And you know why? Because in her right mind, she knew the business was mine. He stared at me. You're hiding behind her illness. I'm honoring the truth. Your mother loved you, but she had a disease that destroyed her ability to think clearly, using her sick words to try to take my business. That's what's really insane. Jake walked out. His lawyer followed, still reading the medical documents. Patricia Chen sat back down. She looked tired. Mr. Patterson, I owe you an apology. I jumped to conclusions based on emotional testimony. The medical evidence is clear. I understand, I said. It's a painful situation. Will he sue? Tom shook his head. If he does, we'll file for summary judgment. No court will find for him with this evidence. He was right. Jake's lawyer called 3 days later. They were withdrawing the claim. No lawsuit, no further action. I should have felt relieved, victorious, but mostly I just felt sad. I tried calling Jake. He didn't answer. I texted him, no response. I drove to his condo. He didn't come to the door. 3 weeks later I got a letter. Not from his lawyer. From him. Robert, I can't have a relationship with you anymore. Every time I see you, I'll think about how you used legal technicalities to deny what my mother wanted. I know what the medical records say, but I also know what she told me. I choose to believe her. Don't contact me again. That was 6 months ago. I haven't heard from him since. The business is doing well. I promoted my general manager, Carlos, to VP of operations. He'll probably buy me out when I retire in a few years. I've updated my will. Half goes to cancer research. The other half is split between my sister's kids and a scholarship fund at the technical college where I used to teach Saturday classes. Nothing goes to Jake. Not out of spite. Just because I learned something from all this. I learned that documentation matters more than trust. I learned that family isn't always who you think it is. I learned that even people you raised, people you loved, will convince themselves of anything if there's enough money involved. Linda used to say that I worried too much about paperwork. Or family. She'd say we don't need everything in writing, but we did. God, we did. If Walter had put terms on that $12,000, we'd have had something clear. If Linda had made her wishes known in a will while she was competent, we'd have had something legal. If I'd gotten her to sign off on the business structure years ago, we'd have had something solid. Instead, we had promises made by a dying woman who couldn't remember her own wedding anniversary, and a stepson who chose to believe those promises over 35 years of reality. I drive past Jake's condo sometimes. I don't stop. I just wonder if he ever thinks about those Saturday mornings when he was 7 years old and I taught him to check his oil. Or the time I drove 8 hours to Phoenix from a business trip in San Diego because he called saying he'd gotten in a car accident and needed help. Or the college graduation where I stood in the back because he said he didn't have enough tickets, but I wanted to see him walk across that stage anyway. I wonder if he remembers any of that or if all he sees now is the business, the money, the 40% he thinks I stole from him. I hope someday he understands. I hope someday he reads those medical records again and realizes that I wasn't hiding behind his mother's illness. I was protecting her memory. I was protecting the truth. Linda wasn't herself at the end. The tumor took that from her, took her memories, her judgment, her understanding of the world. If I'd let Jake take 40% based on words she spoke in that condition, I wouldn't have been honoring her. I'd have been exploiting her. But I don't think Jake will ever see it that way. So, I'm 64 years old, sitting in my office at the Scottsdale location, looking at a picture of Linda from before she got sick. She's laughing, holding a wrench I'd given her as a joke on our anniversary. She was never interested in cars, but she loved that I loved them. I miss her every day. I miss the woman she was before the tumor. The woman who knew that what I built with my own hands. The woman who would never have asked me to give it away. And I've learned the hardest lesson of all. When someone you love is dying, document everything. Not because you don't trust them, but because someday someone might use their sickness against them. Someone might twist their words into weapons. Someone might claim that confusion was clarity and that dying declarations were binding promises. I have those medical records in a fireproof safe. Now, along with the loan repayment receipt, the business licenses, the tax returns, every document that proves this business is mine. Because I learned that in the end, paper beats promises. Evidence beats emotion. And the truth, no matter how painful, matters more than what anyone wants to believe. That's my story. That's what cost me a son, even if he was never really mine. That's what I have to live with. And if there's anyone out there building something, creating something, working 70-hour weeks to make something from nothing, let me give you one piece of advice. Document everything. Get it in writing. Don't assume family will honor your work. Don't assume love means understanding. Don't assume that when you're gone, people will remember the truth. Because they won't. They'll remember what they want to remember. They'll believe what they want to believe. And if you don't have proof, if you don't have paper, if you don't have evidence that stands up in a courtroom, you'll lose everything you built. I didn't lose my business, but I lost my stepson. And I still don't know which loss weighs heavier. That's all I have to say. Thanks for listening to an old man's story. I hope you never have to live it.